Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar today. My name is Jo Grimmond. I come to you from Australia, from the other side of the world, and isn't it wonderful that we can connect through during this time through Zoom. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'm from the University of Wollongong in New South Wales, Australia. So today we're going to talk about one of my absolute passions, and that is bringing maths to life in the home. We're going to explore number today. So just before we start, I'd like to acknowledge Abu Dhabi Early Childhood Authority and thank them. We're so very grateful for the opportunity and making this initiative a reality. So in Australia, we like to start any presentation with an acknowledgement to country, which is acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. So I'm going to do that today for you. So I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the many lands across Australia. I acknowledge the contribution made by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, with particular reference to the education of young children, and I recognise their existence long before our story began. I come to you today from a little place on the south coast of New South Wales on Yuin country, which is about 6 hours south of Sydney, drive south of Sydney, if you're familiar with where Sydney is in Australia. But Wollongong University, where I work, is located on land traditionally owned by the Wadi Wadi people of the Dharawal Nation. So we like to acknowledge those people. So today, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to explore the importance of mathematics in the early years, and we're going to see how maths in the home, how important it is to see maths in the home and in our everyday when we're playing with our children. We're also going to learn about the importance of developing number skills in the early years for later maths achievement and its relationship to later maths achievement. And we're going to explore and play with some simple number activities together with materials that you can find in the home. So the importance of maths learning. Before we start playing with number, I just want to focus a moment on the importance of maths. So the long-term effects of poor early mathematical ability on people's health and well-being is quite extraordinary, and it certainly highlights the needs of high-quality mathematics education in the early years. And we as parents, as our child's first teacher, have a very important role to play in this. In recent times, there has been growing recognition of the importance of mathematics and STEM learning in early years education, with research demonstrating the relationship between the proficiency in maths in the early years and later maths achievement in school and beyond. Research highlights the critical importance of maths learning in the early years as a very strong predictor of later maths achievement. In fact, research has found that mathematics knowledge is a better predictor of life success than literacy, which I found absolutely fascinating. Poor early years mathematics knowledge is linked to a greater likelihood of unemployment, poor pay and prospects, homelessness, disadvantage, health issues, and particularly in regards to females, the research is saying. So we certainly have a big role to play with our children in that. So sometimes our own beliefs influence our confidence in playing with maths with our children. And for many of us, a dislike of mathematics can be linked to a lack of understanding of how maths is embedded and how we see it in our everyday. So learning to recognise maths concepts and processes in our daily lives can help bring about a new appreciation of mathematics and certainly have a positive influence on our own beliefs about and attitudes towards mathematics, and that will influence our children's beliefs and attitudes towards mathematics as well. It's certainly well documented that many educators and also teachers who experience fear and even anxiety in relation to maths may avoid it completely in the early childhood environment and classrooms. And this is much the same in the home learning environment, where family attitudes towards maths may certainly impact on how we approach maths in the home. So I certainly have strong memories of maths at school, and I'm sure that you do as well. I was actually quite proficient in maths during school, and actually did the highest level of maths, but I had a teacher that was that didn't think that females or girls, ladies could achieve in maths, so focused then on the boys in the classroom and neglected me, and I felt like I didn't belong in that classroom. And that has really had a profound impact on how I feel about my own confidence towards maths, which I had to overcome. So by keeping things simple, playful, but certainly thoughtful, it will help us understand this as well. And as we may, as parents, have our own memories, like I've just shared with you, of learning maths, which may impact on how we feel about exploring maths in the home learning environment. So hopefully today I can give you some easy and simple examples of what you can do with your children. And this is why it's important for us to keep it simple and focus on the processes and exploration of maths concepts. We need to see maths as fun, engaging and curious. We need to learn how to tune into many possibilities to extend maths learning while playing with our children. And a common belief when talking about maths is that it is something that you are just good at or not good at. Sometimes you might hear someone saying that they have a maths brain. According to researchers, Clements and Samara, this reflects a belief that mathematics achievement depends on our ability, as opposed to the belief that if you really try hard, you can achieve in maths. So this belief is linked to effort. Having a mathematical mindset is having the ability to actually improve and extend our knowledge in maths, grow our brain, that we are all capable of learning and improving in maths. So we need to have more of a growth mindset when it comes to engaging with maths with our children. We need to see ourselves as facilitators of mathematical exploration. So now it's time to focus in on number sense. So what does it mean to develop number sense? In essence, number allows us to quantify our world. It is about understanding number meanings, knowing relationships between numbers, knowing the size of numbers, and knowing the effects of operating on numbers. Number sense is never complete. Developing number sense is a lifelong process that is promoted through many and varied experiences with using and applying numbers. I want you to think about that for a moment. Applying numbers, not just the rote learning of what numbers look like. The understanding of number is critically important in the understanding of mathematics, and we need to make the most of every opportunity to embed number in play with our children. This can be as simple as counting everything in our everyday or pointing out numbers in our environment. So we need to think about how we embed number learning into our everyday experiences with our children. It's essentially not enough to learn to recognise numerals, but to be able to relate the number of objects to the numeral. Here you can see an image on the slide right now of where a family has used a cardboard box, essentially, to create this amazing car part for their child. And this is a simple matching numeral game, which is amazing. And look how young that child is, quite young. Another way of making this game is to have the number of dots for each car in the car park for your child to match the numeral to the amount of dots. You can do this too. You can essentially make fun and easy games, and I'm going to give you different ideas today about what you can do. So it's nearly time for us to play with our loose parts, but so hopefully you've had a chance to collect some loose parts from your home. But if you haven't, that's okay. You can collect some with your child after the webinar and play along with the games that I'm going to teach you about today. So don't fear. So you can see on the screen lots of different examples of what you could use in the home. So there's pegs, there's sticks that you can find in your garden, and stones you can find, and flowers or leaves, pine cones, nuts, beads, coins, marbles, Lego pieces, counters, coins, anything really that is reasonably small. Coloured pencils or markers are great too, as you can draw and represent numbers with your children. Kitchen containers and cutlery you can use as well to count. And buttons are fabulous if you have a spare button collection like I do at home. That's essentially a fantastic way of counting. There are then lots of ways to play with those loose parts to engage in maths play. So you could explore data with your child and sort the loose parts into categories, or by size or by property. Then you could make charts or graphs with your child, and we're going to have a look at some of those today. The child could draw pictures of the different loose parts and represent them like that, or they could just use tallies, which is another great way to explore number. You could sort them by size or by weight even. Today, we're going to use our loose parts to engage in simple number activities that you can easily do in the home. So counting. Counting requires considerable background of experience. And what I mean by that is, firstly, children sort objects into sets and categorise. And this supports the idea of separating out objects into different groups. So children learn that some objects belong and therefore are counted and become part of the calculation, but some don't and are therefore not counted. And you can try this with your loose parts. Young children will sort toys, they'll sort cars and animals, for example, asking the children if they're counting animals, just to count the number of dogs, for example, if they've got an animal collection, which I know my son had when he was young. So getting them to count specific parts of that group or subcategories is a great way to explore counting. Secondly, children develop an understanding of the language of counting. So the child asks from a young age for another one, don't they? So then they become quite equipped with the repetition of phrases like one more, another one, can I have another one? Thirdly, before children can count, they know that they have 2 hands, 2 feet, 2 arms, and 1 nose. They often know the stories of the 3 little the 3 little pigs or 3 little bears. This instant recognition of a number of items in small sets is referred to as Subitising. We're going to play a Subitising game later on. I'm going to tell you all about Subitising. Playing lots of singing rhymes is really important, with numbers like 5 little ducks went out one day and 10 in the bed. And this will encourage counting forwards and also backwards, and counting down like a rocket blast off is a really great way to encourage that as well. So embedding counting and number into lots of play activities is a fantastic way to explore number. So there are 5 principles of counting so that children can move from rote counting, which is just counting, to the rational counting, where they're able to match each numeral name to a group, and recognising that the purpose of counting is to identify the quantity of the group. So in the one-to-one principle, it refers to that a counting word for each object represents each object in the set to be counted. The stable order simply means that the counting sequence stays the same. The cardinal principle refers to the last counting word that represents the total number of objects. So when you get to the last counting word, that's how many there are. The order irrelevance principle means that the total number of objects stays the same regardless of which objects is counted first. So if your child is counting an amount of animals, it doesn't matter where they start, they're still going to get the same number. And the abstraction principle refers to the fact that the number of objects in a set is the same regardless of whether the objects are the same or different. So if they're counting a group of animals, it doesn't matter if they're counting dogs or cats or cows, the total number of animals stays the same. So we're going to see this in action now with a little video. Here we go, and hopefully this will work. So just let us know if you can't hear it. But I just want to show you this short video of the counting all those principles in action, so that you can understand when you're counting with your child. But just let us know if you can't hear it. Okay, not able to hear it, so I might just stop sharing and get my colleagues to share this video for you through the system.
There are 5 counting principles, 3 of which are absolutely essential. The first 2 go hand in hand. The first is stable order. That means that students need to know their number names in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. You tie stable order with one-to-one correspondence, which means you give each object 1 count and only 1 count, like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the third counting principle is cardinality, which indicates how many are in this set. When I counted this set, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the last number I said was 6, which indicates that there are 6 objects in this set. Now, the other 2 counting principles are not essential, but efficient counters demonstrate these principles. The first is abstraction. Abstraction means that you can count any set of objects. So for example, I could take out some of these motors, bring in some clips and a bear, and if I say that all of these are in the same set, I can count this as a set. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 objects in this set. It does not matter that they're not all the same shape, color, or size. And then the 5th counting principle is order irrelevance. I can count objects from left to right: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can count objects from right to left: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I can really count objects in any order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 objects in this set.
Sharing my presentation again. So hopefully that's given you some really good tips about what you can do with counting with your children. So how can we promote counting with our children? So we need to make numerals prominent, so we can use different materials, sizes, colours throughout the house, cards with dots and numerals on them. We can point out numerals in our environment. So when we're going for a walk, we can point out numerals on houses or buildings. We can point out signs. We can point out numerals when we go shopping. When we can use written numerals and encourage children to write or make marks. So when they're playing shops, getting them to create their own shopping lists for you to, when you go shopping as well. So getting them involved in that. So making the most of every opportunity to make marks and write numerals. We can tap into everyday activities. So things like counting things at pack away time when you are packing away toys with your child, or getting them to pack away, getting them to count them. During lunch and snack times in the home, counting different food items, counting loose parts that we find in the indoors and outdoors. And we're going to do some counting with our loose parts in a moment. And we can engage in board games. So board games involves counting and reading numbers, taking turns and problem solving. And we can read and point out numerals in literature. So when we're sharing books with children, we can point out the different number that's contained in the books. So if you do have your loose parts in front of you, and if you don't, that's okay. Collect your loose parts with your children after the webinar, and you can do some counting and sorting with them. So look at your loose parts and see if you can sort them into categories. So I've got different things like balls, I've got pegs, I've got marbles, I have little blocks, I have Lego pieces that I can sort in, and I can classify. I have corks, so I can classify them into different categories. So have a look and see what you've got and see if you can classify and sort them into categories. So you might like to sort them into, if you've got sticks or stones, you can sort them into the different size sticks or the different size stones. Or if you've got buttons or marbles, you might like to sort them with your child into different colours or different shapes. If you have if you have different shapes, you can sort them into, again, sort them by size and classify them. So think about, have a look at what you've collected and think about how you could sort them into categories to count. And then count each one with your child by touching each object as you count. You might count different colours, or you might count different shapes, or you might count different objects, or you might count different sizes. So if you've got 6, for example, you might just count the different sizes. So if you've got put all the, you've classified those sticks into categories into small and large, you might just count the small ones. So practice counting with your child by touching each object in each group. And then if you have paper and markers or crayons, you can write it down so you can record the number of objects in each category that you've counted, or better still, have your child do it. You might like to create a simple chart or a graph under a heading for each category and use tally marks or numbers to represent the number of objects. Your child might like to practice copying the numerals or making the tally marks themselves. Get your child to be in control of the activity. How many blue marbles have you got, for example? How many long sticks or small stones? How many animals or types of animals have you got? So ask lots of prompting questions, and you can collect those categories and graph them into different categories and classify them. So this is a really important skill for maths learning. So if you haven't got your loose parts, that's okay. I've just given you lots of ideas for you to, when you've collected some loose parts around the home, different Lego pieces or different blocks or buttons or pegs, cutlery, anything that you've got in the home that you can do, practice these activities with your child. So now let's look at Subitising, because this is a very important skill for later maths achievement. And to subitise is from the Latin word called suddenly. So it's the ability to quickly identify a number of items in small sets without counting. So we've just done a little bit of counting in small sets, but Subitising is the ability to recognise them without counting. And it's a very strong predictor of later maths achievement. Lots of research has highlighted that. It can be encouraged by providing children with lots of opportunities to become familiar with particular representations of quantity, such as the way dots are arranged on a dice, just like this one that I have. And if you haven't got a dice at home, you can make one, because there's how you make one on the screen. And you can, there's lots of resources on the internet to help you create a dice from cardboard or paper. So that's a great activity to do with children too. And children's recall of images of a particular number can help them with later calculations when two numbers are added together. So it's early addition, isn't it? Such as 3 and 2. So some children, as they get towards 5, are actually able to identify 5 without counting the 5. So this is where they've had really lots of early exploration with Subitising games. And here you can see on the screen another activity that you can play with and make with your child at home. So this is a simple bingo activity, and all you need is a dice. And if you haven't got a dice at home, then you can make one. And all you need is something like those coloured balls. You can use marbles or buttons from your loose parts or little stones, anything that you have in the home, or counters. And then I encourage you, if you've got an older child, so 4 and 5, get them to draw their own design rather than having one pre-made. So you can see an idea on the screen now. For younger children, you can do this. But if you've got older children, get them to make their own design. And each one of the family, I would encourage to make their own design as well. So choose an animal or an object or a person to create the game out of, and everybody has their own template to use. It's a great fun, engaging game to do with your child. And it encourages the family to participate together. Certainly a great way to explore number. And it could be, and link it in with the child's interest, and we're going to talk about that later, but think about your child's interest. If they love animals, get them to choose their favourite animal. Or if they love cars, get them to make one out of a car. So think about it and link in with the child's interests, and be creative and innovative, and encourage your child to be creative as well. And then it can become a bingo game, a family bingo game to keep for future and look back on. It'll be wonderful to look back on as well. So another way to explore Subitising, and I'm just mindful of the time, but we're nearly there. So we can play a Subitising guessing game like you can see on the screen now. So you could use your loose parts, and again, you can do this with me now, or you can collect some loose parts after the webinar and try later on today to play this wonderful Subitising game. So all you need is a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard or something to hide the blocks or objects, marbles or whatever you've got in your home, buttons behind, and then you can create different little subsets. So you get your child to close their eyes, and then so you hide your materials behind the cardboard so they're not peeking. And then you create a set of objects. So you can see the 3 blocks on the screen, or the 6 underneath. So you can represent like it is on the dice. And I've given you cues on the screen now to use to create those patterns, those dot patterns with your objects from your loose parts in front of you to play this game. But don't forget, you can play this game after the webinar as well. So the idea is to get your child to close their eyes. Then you say, you create the pattern with the blocks. Then you say, 1, 2, 3, look and see, and reveal the object. So then you take the cardboard away, and the child has to see if they can tell you how many blocks they see. But you only let them see it for 2 seconds, 2 or 3 seconds. Because that's how you develop Subitising skills. But if your child wants to count them, that's okay too, because this is just all about engaging in number. So it's okay if they need to count as well. They will be learning how that number, how to represent that number, and they will be developing those number sense skills by playing this game and counting them as well. So that's okay too. And you can also make number cards like you can see on the screen on the table. I would suggest just to 6 to start with to play this game, and just put them out in front of you. And it's just a way, another great way to represent that number by getting your child to point to the number representation of the objects that you've created. So play away, encouraging you to play this game after the webinar today and get some loose parts together. And you can use stones or anything that you can find in your house. All you need is something to shield from, but you can use a scarf or a piece of paper, that's okay. Or you can just get your child to close their eyes, because it's all about that fun and engaging engagement with number. So here's some other Subitising ideas to make with your child, and I've added these to the handout that's on the website, so you can refer to the handout after the webinar as well. But here's another great example on the left you can see on the screen now, where a family has just used cardboard to create number cards with bottle caps. And so you don't have to have pom-poms, you can use buttons again, and they don't have to all be the same. So it's all about getting your child to just represent those numbers, particularly when they're younger as well. And as they get older, then you can increase the challenge. So the Subitising game that I shared with you just then, you can use different arrangements of the objects, so you don't have to follow what's on the domino. You can use your own arrangements. Then you have the lock and the key game, which is another fabulous way to engage in Subitising skills. So on a padlock, if you've got some padlocks in your garage at home or in your shed or in your house, It's a fantastic way to explore Subitising. So on the key, you have the dot representations of the number, and the padlock has the number on it, and the child has to find them, and it's a great, fantastic guessing game. And you can see down the bottom where you can make an insect with cardboard and pegs, or paper and pegs. So representing numbers with their pegs as their legs is another great way to engage children in number sense. Another way to do it is just with a dice. So if you've got a dice, or make a dice at home, then you just play a roll the dice game and just chart it or graph it. So create a chart on a piece of paper, and you can see examples on the screen now. So, so rolling the dice and just using tally marks for every time it lands on a different number. And you can see the younger child on the left has to have a picture of the dice, representation of the number, and on the right, that child can identify the number, so doesn't need the representation of the dots. You can actually recognise the number. So depending on what your child's ability level or age is, yeah, you can play the roll with the dice game. And I've given you another on the screen. You can see how to make the dice, but there's lots of resources on the internet on how to make a dice. Here's some other ideas of how you can play with number with your child and your loose parts and number cards in the home. So get your child to represent different numbers with the loose parts. So you can see 5 being represented with lots of different loose parts down on the right-hand side, and the numbers in a number line, and representing them with pine cones, but you can use sticks or stones or corks or whatever you've got in the home. Whatever you find, go on a scavenger hunt for your loose parts and put your loose parts box together, because there's lots of ways to engage with maths learning with your loose parts. And another way to explore number is obviously through literature. So reading books with your children. So choosing books that highlight different number. And The Very Hungry Caterpillar is one of my favourite stories. Hopefully you're familiar with it. But it's got some fabulous maths learning within that story, and you can see some examples on the screen now. So counting the number of things that the caterpillar likes to eat, linking to the sequence of numbers relate to the days of the week. So the caterpillar eats 2 pears on the Tuesday, for example. It looks at ordinal number, so what comes first, second and third. So identifying that with children is really important as well. Counting on, so adding 1 more piece of fruit each day. So the children can visually see how 1 more increases the number. When we're thinking about measurement, and we're going to look at measurement next week, but comparing sizes of fruit, growth of the caterpillar, classification of foods into categories and counting them, time, so reflecting on what time of the day children eat breakfast, lunch and dinner, and highlighting that, and highlighting in the story the length of the time that the caterpillar is in the cocoon. Spatial awareness skills, so egg on top of the leaf, cocoon around himself, so highlighting that fantastic mathematical vocabulary. Hatches out from the cocoon and inside the egg. Symmetry, which we explored last week, but highlighting symmetry in leaves and butterfly. And chance and data, so collecting data on favourite foods and recording findings on a graph. So ask your children about their favourite foods. So a final reflection for today. So early understandings of number and number sense assist children in learning more complex mathematical ideas. It is often the case that meaningful understandings of number and about number are developed through the exploration of other mathematical ideas such as measurement and shape. Therefore, it is not necessarily the case that number should be the first area of maths explored with young children. Indeed, the sorts of engagement that very young children have with space, shape, and comparison, for example, often provide meaningful opportunities for them to develop number sense. So remember, the key takeaway from today is it's not about just learning what to recognise numbers, it's learning number sense as a whole. So exploring number, representing number with different materials, like in your loose parts, identifying numerals in the environment and exploring them in our daily lives is really, really important. Next session, we'll keep our loose parts together, but next week we're going to explore measurement. So it really carries on from this week because there's number in measurement as well. And the two align very nicely. So we're going to look at measurement, and we're going to also play with materials and explore how we can engage in measurement in the home. So take a photo. If you're engaging in making those games that I've given you ideas to make today, take some photos and add them. We're going to ask you to upload the photos to the website. It can be a Subitising game in action, that like I showed you with the blocks, or the dice game, or a photo of a number game that you've made, like the bingo game that I showed you as well. And thanks for listening, everyone. And now I'll open it up for any questions that you may have. I'll stop sharing my screen and ask if there's any questions from today. I know that some people have added things to the chat. Yeah, just problems with hearing. Sorry about that. Hopefully everything's okay now. Any questions? I've got some questions up my sleeve if there's no questions coming in. I'll start the ball rolling. I often get a question from people that say, you know, my 3-year-old doesn't recognise numbers at the moment. Is this a concern, and what can I do about it? So hopefully you've heard me when I've said that the recognition of numerals isn't the most important part, because that's what we call rote learning. It's important, but it's more important to develop an understanding, so the number sense of number. So being able to group numbers and match the objects to the numeral is more important than just knowing what the numeral looks like. Has a part to play in it. Of course, we like children to be able to identify numerals, and that's part of mathematical learning. However, it's more important for them to have an overall understanding or number sense in their mathematical ability. So being able to group and sort objects. So when you're counting your loose parts, being able to identify that the 3 balls go with the 3 numeral, and playing lots of matching games like that. The car park was a good example of that. So getting children to you know, making simple number games at home that get the children to match the number. So I just have a raised hand. Oh, so first of all, we have a question. How can we start teaching the kids how to add and subtract for kids with developmental delay? Now, I have to say that working with children with disabilities is not my area of expertise, but I will try to answer this as best I can. So just engaging with the materials with them and modelling for the children while you're doing it. So playing alongside your child is very, very important when you're adding and subtracting. So lots of games where you're playing with the number of objects and then taking one away and saying, how many is it now? Let's count them. Adding one on, so counting on is really important, and you can do that with your child. So so getting them really engaged with an overall sense of number and playing with materials is really, really important for all children, but particularly for those with developmental delay. So hopefully I've answered that question for you. Someone has raised a hand. So Stephanie has raised a hand. Would you like to type your question into the chat so that I can answer you, Stephanie? No? Any other questions coming through? I'll just check the chat before I answer. I give you an idea about another question. So what are some activities I can do with older children to explore number? Because, you know, the early years, there's a lot of developmental difference between birth to 8, and that's what we call early years. There's quite a number of different. So again, getting back to that simple engagement with number and modelling the words. So you can do that with your toddlers and babies as well when you're playing with them. Lots of language and just modelling that language of counting objects and modelling the number for them is really important as well. Because just because they can't communicate verbally with us, they are understanding what we're saying. So lots of modelling from an early age. And then as they progress to older children, you can add challenges. So for that Subitising game, for example, just adding a challenge of mixing up the way that the blocks are, or adding more. So instead of just going to 6, going to 9, for example, because there's some children that I have seen children at 5 that can identify 9, the pattern of 9 objects. So just increasing that challenge and making it fun and engaging. So I have had a question come through. What is the age for children can easily learn math? Well, as I said, that you can be doing maths from babies onwards by just modelling and using your language and playing with them and modelling that language through play. So from early as babies and toddlers, you can be doing that, and then increase lots of counting. Children love to count from a very early age. So just count with them, count everything, count their toys, count their cars, count how many, peas are on their plate, or different snacks are on their plate, or count the cutlery, or just embed it into your everyday. Count how many flowers are in your garden, count how many plants you're growing, point out counting when you're going shopping, and point out number that you can see in the environment. Bring your child's attention to that. And you can do that from toddlers as well by just modelling that language and pointing to the sign that has the price on it in the shopping centre, and saying what it is, and just pointing out that environmental print when it comes to number is really, really important. So hopefully I've answered that question. Got time for a couple more questions. If anyone has any more questions, I hope I haven't missed anyone. You're welcome. You're welcome. Hopefully I've answered that, and feel free to email me as well. I'm happy to take your emails if you think of a question after the workshop. That is fine, because it's hard to think of one during a workshop. All right, so another question that I get is, you're welcome. I was never good at maths at school. How can I teach my child about maths when I'm not good at it at all? Everybody can do maths. Maths is part of our everyday. We use maths in our everyday, and we use maths when we don't realise we're using maths. So everybody can engage in maths. And everybody can learn maths. Remember, I talked about mathematical mindsets in the workshop today, and how we need to have a growth mindset. So we need to challenge our brain, because when we challenge our brain, we learn. And we can certainly do that as adults. So engage in maths as much as you can with your children. And we need to show them, we don't want them to think that they can't do it either. So we need to, our attitudes certainly reflect onto our children's attitudes and their beliefs about achieving in maths. So we need to show them, we need to be really good role models, and we need to show them that maths is fun and engaging. We can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be complicated, because we're creating a fantastic foundation for lifelong learning for our children if we do that. So play is the essence of early years education, and it's a fantastic vehicle for maths learning. It's not about worksheets and stencils. It's about playing with real materials, playing with your loose parts box, identifying number in the environment, and linking it to our everyday, because children learn best when they when they have a relationship in the context of their own lives. So their learning is very contextual. So they understand maths when it's meaningful to them, when they're counting their cars or they're counting things in their home that's meaningful to them. So by going on a search for different loose parts in the environment, it's a fun and engaging game that you can do as a family, and then you can sort through your loose parts when you found them. Another great idea that you can do is a treasure hunt. So you can have your number cards with your child. You can make them, and I encourage you to get the child to, if they can make marks, if they're old enough, if they're 4, get them to make their own numerals. And it's okay if it doesn't look like a 3 or look like a 4. It's 4 to them. So you can just model, and you can have another representation of 4 next to it. But it's really important for them to feel like they're achieving. So it doesn't matter if their marks don't represent the number. It's okay, just have it on the back of the card or something. And then hide different materials in the house. So you can hide some little Subitising, you can hide like those keys in the locks. You can make your own little Subitising game by hiding the numbers in the house somewhere, and the child has to find it. So making it fun, making it engaging, maybe hiding, for example, if they love cars, so hiding 3 cars in the house somewhere, and having the number 3 with a little picture of a car, so they know they're looking for 3 cars somewhere in the house, or in the garden, or something that they love. If they love animals, or I know my son loves frogs and has loved frogs all his life. So hiding 3 frogs or 5 frogs in the house somewhere for them to find is another great way to engage with number learning. So it's just about playing with the children and linking to their interests. Another question that I often get, can I open it up for any other questions? Is there anyone that's got a burning question before I answer another one of my own that I often get? No? So another question I get is, in these times that we're in, children are always on technology, on their iPad. And I know my son is on the iPad, on the iPhone, or on the computer. Another question I get is, my child never wants to do anything else but be on the iPad. How can I get them to engage in number and maths in play? So it's all about, like I just said, linking it to their interest. If they have a specific interest in frogs or cars, linking it to them. So making it quite attractive for them. Getting them to create their own resources is another way to engage them in maths learning themselves, rather than us being the teacher. We're the facilitator of the learning. We're, as parents, we're very important in this process. We're the child's first teacher, but we're the facilitator. So get your child to be in charge, and suggest a game that maybe links to their interests. So you know your child best, and you know what their child interests are. So that's a great way to play a Subitising game with your child, with the family, or a board game with your child, with the family. Engage the whole family in the process, and trust me, you'll get them involved in the learning. We have time for one more question. If anyone's got one more question for me, or someone else. No. No other questions? All right, well, we might finish for the day, but thank you so much for engaging in the workshop with me today. And I encourage you to, for the rest of the day, go on a search for loose parts with your child, and collect some, sort them, count them, sort them into categories, classify them, sort them by the different attributes that they have. So for example, colour or shape or size, and count them, create charts and graphs. So get your children to tally or represent the number with their own drawings is another fantastic idea. And play some dice games. So just roll the dice and play some dice games. Play that Subitising game with your loose parts, using different things that you've got, that you've collected, and they can be, so for me, I'm very, very close to the beach. So I like to use shells in parts of my loose parts. So think about your environment and your home and whatever you've got in your home. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy any materials. You can use Lego blocks, Tupperware, containers, anything that you have in the home. Toy cars, any of your child's toys that you can use as well. And go forth and play with maths. The key word here is play and be engaging. Make it fun for your children and they will learn. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. You're welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully you've taken away some ideas and some information that will help you with working with your children. You're welcome. Very welcome. Thank you, everyone. My pleasure. It's lovely to link, to connect from the other side of the world. So thanks again. Bye-bye.